Happy Memorial Day, everybody. To all my fellow service members, have the day off. You know, I'm giving you the day off. Not that you, I guess, needed me to do that, but you deserve it. As for us today, no such luck as a day off, at least from boat work, and that's fine by me. I much prefer it that way, truthfully. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little stern work today. Once again, I'm still waiting for my epoxy, so I can't really do a whole lot along the like I had planned to running the fillets. But now's a good time, I think, to talk to you guys about mistakes and how to overcome mistakes. As I've said previously throughout my videos and even in my blog, this is my first boat. This is my first attempt building a boat, so I am by no means an expert. I just kind of want to encourage people to don't be scared to jump into something because you've never done it before. If that was the case, nobody would be good at anything or have any kind of experience. So anyways, onward to what I made the mistake on. If you can see in here, this is the interior of the, obviously of the boat, towards the transom. This being the transom, the interior of the transom, and the fuel lockers, the port, and of course starboard fuel lockers. When I was cutting the original members for the keel and for, you know, fitting the frames to the chines and the shear, I foolishly assumed that frame J was going to be the absolute end of the boat, and then the transom would, for the most part, you know, just kind of be built off that. Boy, was I wrong. It calls for another, I don't know, like what, about 8 inches or so, maybe 10 inches, past frame J, which this is frame J right here. And then obviously it butts up to the transom, which is right here. So, but that was after I had already laminated the keel, run it over the strong back, hooked the frames to it, and even I believe after I ran the chines, and maybe even the shear. I don't quite remember. But what I do remember is that I realized I was about, I'd say about 8 to 10 inches short on keel. So what are you going to do? Well, I ran out of my pine. I say I ran out of it. That's not entirely accurate. I had more pine scraps, which is what this is. The keel is actually 1x4 pine, clear yellow pine. So I had determined that what I would do is I would cut a block of that pine, laminate it, which I don't think you can see all that well because it's pretty dark down there. I'll probably have to get a light. And that would extend the keel. I then decided to put a piece of plywood over it to add strength and basically kind of scarf it, or try to scarf it as best I could, even though it's hideous and not really a scarf, into frame J. This is the plate where the notch, the two members of the frame join to create the V. So that's what that plywood plate is. So what I needed to do, once again, was secure it to this, which I did. I ran screws into it, and then I also used copious amounts of epoxy. And it's pretty strong. It's held up really well. There's been no fatigue, no any of that. I also ran because I needed to clad it, of course, in the plywood. So I ran these pieces of 1x right here, along to act as somewhat of a shelf, if you will, to lay the plywood for the hull on and to screw into, and then of course epoxy into. And in all reality, that's worked out real well. I can't really complain. It's for the most part done good. However, me being the paranoid guy that I am, I kind of figure if it's worth building, it's worth overbuilding. Because you just don't want to be out in the middle of a lake or in, you know, big water, and of course the back of your boat falls off. I mean, that would just be a bad day, I think, all around, and may put some people off of boating indefinitely. So what that means for me is that I'm going to do what I've seen a lot of other shipwrights do, to include Louis Suzette, which if you haven't checked out his channel, I would highly recommend it. Tips from a Shipwright. I get a lot of good ideas from him. His content is always well received, at least by me. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a knee right here. It's going to be a laminated plywood knee consisting of about 2 or 3 layers of 1/2-inch marine ply. And it's going to fit right down in here to kind of hold the transom, the bottom of the keel, and frame J together to add structure. I then plan on, once that's done and I get more epoxy in, I'm going to create epoxy fillets that go around everything. So basically I'm going to fillet the ever-loving crap out of this, and then I'm going to call it good, because that's just what's going to happen. But as it stands right now, that's where we're at. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and get some scrap plywood, and I'm going to start cutting, at least to prep to laminate the knee. And what I'm going to use for that is some of my scrap from sheeting the hull. And as you can see right there is a nice beautiful piece of Doug Fir marine ply. Good 5-ply stuff. It's real strong. It's a little splintery, but you know that the characteristics of the plywood, I think, are fantastic, all told. And it's expensive. It's about $50 a sheet, so it's pretty expensive. So that's what we're going to use. That's the entirety of my quote-unquote fixing my mistake / my repair to fix my mistake. So now you guys are kind of brought up to speed on that. And I will kind of keep you apprised as to how that pans out. But as it stands right now, that's where we're going. That's where we're headed. And I will probably catch you guys up later. Hey everybody. So like I said, working on that knee project for the transom. And I just got done actually cutting the pieces that I'm going to need that is actually going to go into making the knee, and I'm going ahead and laminating them. Now I know you're over there saying, well wait, I thought you were out of epoxy. Well, I'm out of the epoxy that I need to have for like the fillets along the chine and the keel, and then the different the hull plates and the paneling and the shear, and to make all my fillets, because I'm out of what my thin epoxy, which is good for lots of movement. It's not brittle. This thick epoxy is brittle, very brittle, and I actually used it on a lot of the early members by accident, thinking that it was just as good as the thin stuff. It's not. Well, it's good for its own purpose. It sets up a lot thicker and harder, but because of that, it's a lot more brittle. But I had a gallon, a little bit of this half-gallon laying around, so I was like, well, since this shouldn't experience a whole lot of torsion or a whole lot of tensile strength, well, or at least hopefully not, or no more than like a chine or a keel, I assumed that it would be okay to laminate with it. So I mixed that with some 2-to-1 versus my 3-to-1 stuff, which I use for everything else. The hardener for a 2-to-1 system means 2 pumps of the resin for 1 pump of the hardener. Now, 2-to-1 hardener is a little bit more particular than 3-to-1. It needs a much warmer day to finish setting up, or to set up properly, for at least the first 2 hours. So we're at like 80 degrees in the shop, so I'm fairly certain that we'll be okay for at least 2 hours to have this stuff set up, or whatever the requisite time is. I don't see it cooling down to like 70 something, or like into the low 70s until this evening. So that's where we're at. So like I said, we've got the knee laminating right now, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a mistake I made. And that would be on these pieces over here. When I was cutting, I took my measurements, and I just thought that all I needed was the bottom measurement on my keel, which was about 6 1/4, and my my frame height, which is about 10.5. What does that translate to? Well, that means I had a perfect square. But as you can see, while it did fit down there fairly nicely, it didn't fit up here because this is at an angle. It's wider up here than it is down there. It's almost or a little more than 2 inches wide. Oh, wider, I'm sorry. So, and I figured that out after I cut those two pieces to fit. So, I went ahead and just did it again. So we cut it again, and now we're too wide to fit down much further than about like right here, and that's fine because once that's done drying, I'm going to shape it to fit there very well. So we should be okay, and then we'll be really strong then because the transom will have a knee, which is good. That's a good thing because now the back of the boat is very strong. But I just kind of wanted to touch you guys up on that, and that's kind of, you know, what's going on right now. Up next, since I still have plenty of time before that's done drying, because as you can probably see, it's still leaking out the seams, which, yeah, it's okay. I mean, that just means it's good and clamped. So what that means now is I'm going to tackle another project, and that is to get the doors for the fuel lockers. And that's because I want to start kind of, you know, making the doors to basically tie the back of the boat together and make it, for the most part, done to where now I can work on, you know, just the cabin. But I have some spare yellow pine laying around, and it's the good stuff that I used on the frames. So I think I'm going to use that to make the frames for these doors. At least that's kind of what I'm envisioning. So that's where we stand with this, and I will catch you guys up. I've still got a little more percolating to do on the doors and how they're going to open and how they're going to sit and all that. So once I've figured all that out, I will catch you guys back up. But that's kind of where we're at now. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and I will, like I said, catch you guys up when there's a little bit more to talk about.